I'm really setting this up for people who are working on an MVP or up through having a working beta prior to capitalization and launch, up to capitalization. Everybody who's got a startup in this room, it sounds like they're in about that range. I would go ahead and just right off the bat, don't worry about press releases. You need to pay attention to the media that you would like to get into, whether it's today or in the future. There should be trade journals that are specific to your industry that you should start reading and paying attention to, and you should know which reporters in those trade journals or local media. If there's somebody at the Business Journal like Nathan Rubel who has done stories about startups that are like yours, so qualify that they do stories about your type of thing. Don't just send reporters a blanket email. You'll just piss everybody off. You'll get no return on that. But if you can find somebody who's like, oh, this reporter at this trade journal does the kind of news on startups that someday he may choose to tell my story. Don't wait until you're already doing well. Contact the guy way ahead of time by email. They're usually easy to track down on the website or through like LinkedIn. But get in touch with that reporter or reporters. Start those things early. Send them an email saying, hey, I'm nowhere near where you're probably going to want to do a story about me yet, but I saw you did this other story and I'm building something that is in this realm. I wanted to get introduced to you because I think someday I'm going to have something awesome, because every reporter wants to tell stories. The business of news is sometimes crappy, but nobody does reporting because they don't enjoy the telling of stories. That is absolutely what they want to do.
But the stories are biased by the people that they're already working with, spending money advertising there.
That's a great question. And it depends on I talked about the shitification of the news industry. That is one aspect of it. It's called pay to play. Yeah, I made it up, but I haven't got a trademark. You can use it. It's public domain.
Public disclosure, right?
Public domain. It is completely. Yeah. I am not Disney. I'm not going to hold on to Steamboat Willie on this one. But what you're talking about is called pay to play. My kind and wonderful competitors at the Post-Dispatch do this quite a bit. I believe that the Business Journal I know does this. I think the Post-Dispatch may do it in their online editions. I've been told that they do, but I haven't paid enough attention to them, so I'm not sure. This is a scourge on media in general. And if you want to go pay to play, you wouldn't be alone. God, I wish I had a hard answer for that, because that is a beautiful question. Journalists generally want to just tell stories, and they want to tell good ones. That's why they're in this industry. But the business of news has changed significantly in the last 30 years for many reasons. And there's massive studies in academia that show that everything on television and radio and the internet is there to make you angry so that you click more, so that you can be shown as a better, you're the product for the advertiser. You're not paying for anything, but now you're the product. And that's a huge discussion. And man,
basically you're saying,
I get it. I can't address that. I am addressing it. My publication that I've been running for 4 years hasn't taken a penny in advertising because of the bad behavior that it promotes. I'm behind a paywall. People got to pay to read my stuff.
With the antibiotic resistance.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of science going on around. But in my industry, I can't get them to do a story on me because they're afraid they're going to piss off their advertisers or all the antibiotics.
I get it. And the business of news is very broken, but still getting in touch with that reporter to get an advocate, to just have early stuff, say, and be frank, say, my business is not further along, but we're doing this cool stuff with technology. Can we at least show you what we're doing? Come to our website. Or can we open a dialogue? I just want you to be aware of it because we're doing stuff. That gets somewhere. That does work with the reporter. Now, the business of news, dude, that's a whole shit show. It's just bad. Let's pivot to the other thing. Let's say your business is now doing well enough that you're going to hire in-house or out-of-house PR person, and you'll be approached by them. There's a whole industry of discontented, wanted to be a journalist, couldn't make it in their first journalism job, who are making good money in PR. These PR people will contact you. They're going to say, I see that you guys are growing. For this amount of money, we'll do press releases. We'll put them out on PR Newswire, which is a good place to put it. I'll get with you with just a second, Professor. You'll put it out on Business Wire is another one. Every business journalist I know has keyword searches or key area searches and is looking at those two sources, or at least one of those sources, every day for press releases. So you will get in front of reporters that way. But here's what the reporters complain about and why this is a really waste of your money unless you are paying attention to what this PR person you just hired is doing. They're selling you on a package of, we're writing these press releases, we're getting them out in front of people. You're not really paying for press releases. You're paying for engagement and free media like me. We are saying flat out, and Dave over at the Post and Nathan at the Business Journal join me in this loudly proclaiming, when we call the number that says, for interviews and more information, call this number, We constantly meet your PR person who says, oh, can we set this up for next Wednesday? And the answer is no. News doesn't have next Wednesday. That's old. And you guys are paying for a press release. You're getting my attention. I'm calling and I'm telling you 9 times out of 10 or more, I'm not doing your story because I can't get in touch with you for a quote. I'm not using the quote that's in the press release because it's always you guys. They write it for you. You're not really saying it. And it always starts with, we're really excited. I don't give a shit if you're excited. I want to know, how is this going to grow your company? You being excited that some pillar of your industry is now on your advisory board. I don't care how much, I'm not going to report on your level of excitement. I need a quote about what does this guy bring into your advisory board that's going to help you grow your company. That's what I want to know. And I want to hear it from you. And I want to put in the magic words, your name told BizBlip this. Me telling my readers that I actually talked to you raises value in my story for my readers. And I'm not working for you. I'm working with you, but your PR people that you're hiring, at least for the pre-seed, seed, and early scale stages, are really doing you a disservice, and they're not being held accountable. That when that press release goes out, they need to be able to tell you, I'm putting this press release out Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. You need to be sitting around that morning or available and be able to step out of meetings to take a phone call, because it really needs to get that way. I'm online only, but my counterparts at the traditional paper things, they're not waiting for printing anymore. It's going in their online editions. It's going in their online editions today and now. Does that problem sound like one that now makes sense to you? And yes, Professor.
My question is, okay, if I've got something that I want to tell somebody, I may call a reporter. I heard that business journals very often will happy to receive a whole article.
Sometimes.
How do we create visibility at the very early stages when we really want to get, I want to say, guidance, how to move our idea forward?
That's a good question. And I'm going to come at it from a little bit different thing, because it's not just getting the message out, it's getting the message to be coherent. And I deal with a lot of people at the MVP stage, where a couple guys or gals that have been working on this product of some kind for months, and now they're coming out and they're getting in front of stakeholders of some kind. Generally not venture capitalists. We're talking about somebody that they can hire as a contractor, or friends, families, and fools. But they're now trying to get some beginning $10,000 to get going. If it's a working beta, they're trying to get somebody to come and use their product so they can get feedback. They're not telling their story well. They're all tied up on features, and they're not talking about benefit.
So the story, I'm looking at the story before the story. I'm wondering, how do I get my idea out so I get people to say, gee, that sounds like an interesting thing. Tell me about it. The social media or the media marketplace at this point is the right answer and the wrong answer.
It is. And I'm assuming that all of you are doing some level of, I've got a website, I've got some social media, at least LinkedIn. Now, you may not be super engaged on it, but when someone's looking for you, they will go there. So do have it nice and clean and not confusing at the very least, and have your contact information there so they can get in touch with you somehow. That's good for you. So that when you're trying to craft your message, though, you're gonna go do a lot of uncomfortable stuff. Like WashU has, for anybody who wants to walk in, like a couple times a month, something called an idea bounce, where you can go in there and get in front of a small audience and put out it's not a pitch, because you're not trying to win anything, but you're going to get some feedback on how to improve it. 1 million cups is another one. When you become along a little bit, getting in front of every audience that you can, whether there's a big phone check like at my pitch competition, or whether it's just feedback. You want feedback on how to improve your stuff. Get a mentor. I used to refer people through to I-10 because they had mentors that were really good. Some were good, some were bad. They were all well-meaning. But I used 7 or 8 of the mentors in I-10 when I was in ideation and getting my stuff together. 2 of them were specifically tied to pitching. I went into the 5-minute pitch practice and the 2-minute pitch practice, which were 2 separately held things, every month for like 6 months to have them. And at first they were really brutal about it. This is a closed door thing. And they would say, man, you're all over the place. What is it that you do? I'm getting feedback that's so valuable. It's pissing me off, but it's exactly what I need. The other options are going to every place that will let you get in front of a microphone. And there are several, but I would argue there's not enough.
Most of those startups don't even do the right work for business model canvas before they start pitching.
No, they don't.
So if you get up and start saying, this is my idea, you haven't really figured out your value proposition. You're just talking. You're not really focused.
This is my idea is a waste of everybody's time.
Exactly. It's a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah, and that happens frequently.
Most likely, most of those should be killed.
Right there at the beginning of that, because the elevator speech can be no longer than 15 seconds.
Oh, you got to get their attention immediately. Don't hold anything back.
So if you can't tell your story, two separate meetings back with it again.
And it's hard to convey that to someone.
Yeah.
If they're meeting with mentors, like there are some really good mentors that are available, but they tend to pull their punches. I was gifted with some that were real assholes, which is good. Like Jack Scatizzi, who's now in charge of Missouri Technology Corporation, was brutal to me. There was no, you did this well. It was all, this sucked, and this won't work, and you're wasting our time. I wanted to punch him, but it's exactly what I needed. It's hard to get somebody who will be that honest. Most mentors are like lawyers and service providers, and they'll give you some kind feedback, and they'll say, well, I think you ought to approve this stuff, but they're hoping that they're going to get you to buy their services when you're a big company. So they're not going to come off looking like an a-hole. Jack doesn't mind acting like an a-hole because he wasn't there to serve any, sell anyone service. I'm not here to sell you any service either.
Same thing, because we're taxpayer funded. So I'm not charging you. So I'm going to be very brutally honest.
Getting rough feedback, as uncomfortable as it is, and man, it saves time better than anything else. And get in front of somebody who will tell you, oh, this is ridiculous what you're trying to do, or I've seen that 5 times already and they all failed. And then you should follow up with, where do I get more information about those 5 who failed? Who was the CEO? Can I talk to them? You want to know, not knowing or just living in your fantasy of your solution. Don't fall in love with your solution. Your solution probably sucks. If you're in ideation and MVP, your solution sucks. Fall in love with the problem and pay attention to where your solution sucks and make it better. It's all about iteration, and you need really good feedback frequently and stuff that you can rely on. And it's hard to get in front of every microphone. And I know none of you went to school with the idea of, I'm going to get in front of microphones, because that sucks. I liked being a journalist, but I liked being on the other end of a phone. I liked being back in a newsroom. I never liked getting out in front of people. Sitting in front of you guys today is like my worst nightmare. I hate this. I do. Can I do it? Have I gotten better at it? Yes. This is not my preferred thing. Let's go ahead and wrap things up. When we do get to the press release part, when you write a press release, if you want to write a press release, there's 4 elements. The first thing should be a very concise, what happened? The second one should be a quote from you, not talking about how you're excited or anything that's internal to you. It should be, I'm going to use this thing to grow my business this way. Really, it should all be action words. This first customer is going to give us feedback to improve our product in a better way than any other we've had the opportunity to do. A paying customer is a gold mine when they're giving us feedback. Tell us why a first customer. It's great to have a first customer, but if you can't convey why, if you just say, we're really excited to work with such a quality business as XYZ Incorporated and their brilliant CEO, dude, that's a waste of time statement. Then you get into a paragraph on what do you do? And that is not details about the features of your product. It's the benefit. I run pitch competitions. I do this stuff. I do that, the other. I got news. I got all this automation. What I do is I help founders refine their message and get some recognition in their community. That's it. That's what I do. You want the person to then ask you how you do it. When you're building features and you're building the stuff, you get so focused on the toys. You got to remember, it's not the steak, it's the sizzle that people buy. Sell that sizzle. And we're not trained on it. And we're focused on putting together that next new wrinkle in our toy that we're building. We love our solution. Man, no, talk in general terms, keep it simple, say what you do to the customer, not to you. And then the last bit, you should give some sort of background, like start bragging. We won $1,000 at the Pitches Get Stitches pitch competition in April 1920, whatever. We got a golden handshake award at this thing and the other. Start bragging about that you're active, that you're growing your company, that you're doing early stage startup stuff, because that does count and people do pay attention to it. And then end it with, you can contact me here. And mean it. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can put that out on PR Newswire. You can put that out on Business Wire if you want. It will get in front of some reporters. The last bit, let's say you got your business. You're moving along. You've got your happy PR people, but something goes wrong and you get this reporter who's calling and says, hey, on Reddit, all these people are saying that what your product is being used for is killing people, or some gotcha, right? Some reporter plays a gotcha. Every founder's worst fear. And it's rare, but it can happen. Here's how you handle that. You want to get time. You're gonna listen to them fully. You're going to ask them to rephrase the question so that you're sure what they're talking about. It also gives you some time to think. Could you rephrase that? It gives you a second on that phone. Don't hang up that phone. You're going to want to say, what's your deadline? And you're going to write that down. And you're going to say, and how can I get in touch with you by email with a response? And they're going to say, well, I really want you to have a vocal response. And you're going to say, I understand, but how can I get in touch with you by email? They'll give into it, because it's not a response. It's not the way they want it. And say, look, I'm not going to respond to you by voice. I'm just not trained in that. You can say that. I will have a response for you. I will email it to you. I will make it by your deadline. And you can't fail in those. And then you go freak out and get your advisors together and figure out how you're going to respond to this. And you respond to it forthrightly. If it is a real bad thing, man, own the problem. Just own it. You have to respond to the bad stuff. You can get some time by saying, what's your deadline, and give me your email address. But man, use that time well and come up with a real response. Own it. Say what you're going to do to address it. Like, I'm going to put warnings that this is not meant for infants. We're immediately putting it up on our website. We're immediately putting it on all of our labels. We may recall stuff, whatever, but treat it seriously. I see now that this is being prescribed to infants. I never imagined that. But I'm doing this to address that problem. Whatever the problem is, man, you better be doing something to address that problem. Whether you made it or not, it's going to kill your business if you don't. And then there's a couple other. If you want to follow somebody on TikTok, Molly McPherson is a, what do you call it, a disaster PR lady, and she's going through all of the. She doesn't talk about the clients she works with, because when you're doing that kind of work, you don't acknowledge that you're doing work for big companies. But she goes through and dissects movie stars that are screwing up and how they should have responded. And oh no, this one responded well. If you want to learn a little bit about crisis communications, follow Molly McPherson on TikTok, and I think she's over on YouTube. It's entertaining, but she is absolutely a good practitioner of this, and you're going to get the basic principles on if something bad happens. Now, mind you, the odds of that happening is pretty slim. Most reporters are so inundated with stuff, they're not paying attention to any of you guys. They're not paying attention to the big companies like they used to. The Post-Dispatch back in 99, when I first started to compete against them, their business section had 12 reporters. It has 3 reporters now. The Business Journal, I think, had 6 or 7 reporters back then. They have 3 reporters right now. Both of those publications have responded to a change in the business of news by taking an axe to reporters. The ones that are there are very skilled and very good people, and I know some of them personally, but they're up to here with regurgitating press releases, taking out pay-to-play stuff and making sure it's spelled right and looks right. The business has changed a lot. I'm going to do a little self-promotion here because it answers that. Is that okay? I did not come here to do self-promotion. I've been hearing from early stage founders, I need to get feedback on my pitch as I'm developing it, from out the door, idea stage, all the way up to I'm getting in front of investors, like actual VCs. They want to refine this, and they want to be able to test it and retest it. I started a pitch competition because some guy called me. We were emerging from lockdown and said, hey, nobody's doing a pitch competition. Could you do it? And I'm just like, yeah, sure, why not? I didn't know that I was going to start down a discovery process with my founders that leads to that, and then coming up with a solution. What I found is that since I've moved it to online and I've got more plans to develop it further, when somebody goes to Blippi Pitch and puts their video in, now mind you, they're giving me some information that's cutting my cost of acquisition for following them in their news. They're initiating news coverage, right? When you put your information in on my secret founders portal, I use it so I can report on your company. But you can also upload a 2-minute pitch video. You can see where you're losing everybody who puts a video up and gets run through a pitch. Now these people were kind enough to let me know to show this as a display, because they lost some people immediately when they said we're a dating app, because there's a lot of people who don't like dating apps. And they're like, yeah, we expected that. That's normal. They did really well at retaining their audience. I'm telling you, most of the people who are at this stage who didn't want me to share their information are seeing a 60% drop in 15 seconds. That is so typical. But knowing that is incredibly valuable to these people. The number one thing they say to me right after that is, when can I retest that? And I don't have a good answer for that, but I'm working on it. The other thing that I put in recently is I've asked my readers, I asked them to fill out a simple form and tell them what they liked and what they didn't like. Like this one mostly did pretty good with the solution, pretty good with the problem, a little bit better. They trended pretty down on pitchiness. Pitchiness was badly defined. I might change that, but it's basically, were you able to convey this information well? Not real well. But this is, again, qualitative information that they like. This quantitative information says where you're losing them. This says what you need to improve. And now I'm getting them saying, I've got that crappy MVP, clunky, bad UI UX test bed that I launched in January of this year, where 80 founders have logged on and 40 of them actually put some information. I lost half of them because it's really bad UI UX. If you're building something, you understand the first jump out is not good, but I'm working with people to work on the UI UX. At the same time, I'm trying to answer the question, how do I retest? Because I don't have a real good mechanism for it. And I'm thinking that it's going to be an app that's like Tinder or a swipey app, where you go to my founders portal, you upload a video, we get the feedback you need today, not tied to a pitch competition at all, but as an entertainment thing. People who are just interested. I need hundreds of videos in that though, because people rail through those pretty quickly. I can't just, right now I'm doing 3 a week and that's just fine for what I'm doing here, but I need hundreds of them to get that kind of feedback. But that allows the founders to get that feedback like that, change their pitch, put it up again tomorrow on the new one, and do a quick revision. So exactly what you're talking about. My name's Paul Riot and I run Bizz.com. I cover a lot of tech startups. I've also got a long history in journalism. Let me qualify myself
on the journalism bit for a little bit, and then I'm going to qualify myself on the tech startup bit. Journalism, I had no plans for life, did slightly better my freshman year. I think I got a B in a philosophy class. I didn't have very good grades, so I took another philosophy class, and that's how you become a philosophy major. So I got a degree in political philosophy. Having a philosophy degree with no plans on what to do with it is just fantastic. It means I had all of the balls in the world to try whatever I wanted, and none of the wisdom to know that I'm not at all qualified for anything. I don't know why I got a wild hair on being working at a TV station. I wanted to work in their promotions department, working with video. I really wanted that, but I was willing to work anywhere in the building. I also wanted to get the hell out of St. Louis, so I was down in Mobile, Alabama, couch surfing with some friends that I'd known from high school a few years ahead of me. I was papering the entire Gulf Coast, every broadcast with the same resume every week for 9 months. I ended up seeing a receptionist that was, the real one was sick. The temporary was overloaded. I waved at her and she buzzed me into the building. I got an interview and got a job. So breaking and entering is part of my story. I never took a class in journalism. Man, I never had a plan for life. But I found that I absolutely thoroughly loved in the early 90s journalism. I learned it is a trade. I worked in journalism as the entire industry suffered from a shitification tied to deregulation, bigger media companies buying other bigger media companies. That got us to where we're at today. I last worked in broadcasting as the assignment editor at Fox Kansas City. It's like the spider in the middle of the web that is tracking all of the stories that the producers pick for their newscast. Before that, I was the producer at Channel 11 during the OJ years. And now, mind you, I didn't like some of what my news director wanted me to do, because I was saying, let's not even do an OJ story. But he was like, oh man, we're going to do it big. And I went, yes, sir, we're going to do it big. So we did OJ really big, all of the court stuff. Naturally, the ratings went down. I got fired from that. Right before the news director got fired himself. That's the way the business is. Before that, I was a producer in Mobile, Alabama at 2 different stations. I was a full-on producer by the time I was 24. Once I learned some of the rudimentary stuff, the philosophy degree came in really handy. I broke the Sunset Limited disaster. So it's still the most deadly train disaster in U.S. history. I've done political conventions. I've done all kinds of neat stuff. I just haven't reported from a war zone. That's something I always wanted to do. I ended up getting out of broadcasting to go work as the editor of Kansas City Hispanic News, which is a general news publication for the Hispanic community of Kansas City. It's a lot like the St. Louis American. It's an English language paper for a ethnic community about general news. I learned a lot about print there. Moved over to a .com in 99 when the .com bubble was in full swing, and worked for a place called localbusiness.com. That's where I ran into my first entrepreneurs. That they were doing a lot of stuff, even in the St. Louis area. And I opened their St. Louis location. Last to be hired, last to be fired, as the company mailed out checks before the banks seized the bank accounts were seized by the creditors. So it was a .com ride. But I remember turning to my soon-to-be wife and saying, I was like, we're getting married, but if I'm going to get a job, it ain't going to be here. She wasn't real happy with that. And she said those fateful words, you've always said you could do it better than them. Why don't you do it? And that's when I became an entrepreneur. I did a fair amount of investigation into the technologies of the time. I was looking at what the general flows were going on with news in general at that time, and we're talking February of 2000. Newspapers all across the country were going online for free with all of their content, and they were shocked, I say, to see that their paid subscribers were just plummeting. And their reaction to that was to lay off journalists. And I said, those people need a tool to lock people out and require payment online. I got busy, and I spent 18 months designing software, and then another 6 months with when I found a coder to do it, getting that thing coded up. And I made what may be the first news paywall in the world, or at least in America. I say maybe because I had it up and running, and I had about 300 paid subscribers. I needed about 3,000, but I had about 300. I got a call from the Wall Street Journal, and they said, hey, we see that you're putting all your news behind this thing. Now, they didn't use the word paywall because I don't think it existed at the time, but they said, we've been looking for somebody who's doing this. And I said, have you found anyone else? And this was the first time I realized that I was screwed. They said, nope, haven't seen anybody. And I thought that there were people developing this kind of tool for newspapers across the country, because it was so obvious that a paywall was needed, and yet there wasn't anyone doing one. I remember talking to a venture capitalist who had said, you can't be too far ahead of the market, and I knew I was too far ahead of the market. About 9 months later, my business just pancaked. I lost that wife, and I lost the house and the 401k and all that kind of stuff, and I bitterly took my ball left. I had no intention of ever doing any of this stuff again. In fact, I got out of journalism because it was kind of going downhill and becoming kind of the shit show that we see today. But I got called by Joe Sorahan, who was the past president of the Missouri Venture Forum. And he said, there's this new guy named Jack Scatizzi in town. I'm in from California. Let's have a sit down and talk about what we can do about getting a publication covering early stage tech startups. Now, I thought they were going to offer me a job. Now, they asked me to look at the situation. And I was initially, I didn't like it. I ruined my life with the first publication. But I started digging in. I started looking around. There's some good reasons to make this happen. I've done a whole lot of automation that we're putting in place right now on my back, allowing me to do traditional beat reporting, which is the most expensive kind of reporting. That's why nobody at my competitors do it. They're replying to press releases. I think press releases, when it comes to early stage founders, doesn't work because most of you guys don't write them. You're always doing something, but when you're done, you don't celebrate, you move on to the next problem. So having the ability to contact you on a regular basis and say, hey, did you ever finish that thing you were talking about 3 months ago? And having automation to remind me that, hey, he said this, follow up 2 months from now. That's stuff that I'm putting in place and really ratcheting up some technology in the news sector.